Mma arrived at her Studio Plus boutique. It was a one-story building in the high-profile part of the town. She parked her car and glanced at her building. Amazing pieces from smart working clothes to enchanting evening attires could be seen from the show glass. As she entered the building, there were already customers and the admiring glances followed her as usual. She walked through the bottom floor which housed the men's attires to her manager's office. Phyllis was her manager, friend, brother, and every other thing in between. He was also the only one she had closest to a family, him and his wife Thircy. "Morning, babe," he greeted. "Good morning, Phyllis. I can see it is a really good morning. Do you have any idea what brought these people out this early?" she asked jokingly. "I guess they saw you and followed you here," he laughed. "Were they so anxious to see me that they got here before me?" "Oh, Phyllis, don't believe everything you hear. I don't attract them like that," she smiled. "You are beautiful. It is only natural you should attract them. Besides, it brings them here. Anyway, I hope they are buying and not just looking around," she sighed, glanced at the store through the glass wall. "The only one who seems to be looking around is that gentleman over there," Phyllis observed, pointing at a tall, handsome man. Mma turned to look at the man, and her breath caught in her throat, astonished at the man for some reason she couldn't understand. She had to blink severally to drag her eyes away from him. Yet, she couldn't stop looking at him. Good thing he couldn't see her ogling. The glass was designed to reflect, not see through. The man was tall and ruggedly handsome, and his grey business suit fit him squarely on his broad shoulders. Everything about him spoke confidence and wealth. He is not merely looking around. He looks as if he cannot make up his mind. "Maybe he needs help," suggested Mma and turned to Phyllis. "I am sure he would be glad to have you as a guide," Phyllis told her. Mma was instantly thrilled with the idea of speaking to the very handsome man, but she dared not, because at the same time, there was something abnormally unsettling about him. "Phyllis, my office is upstairs. You take care of things down here, not me," she smiled at him sweetly. "But I am sure you would make a better guide. He would want to impress you." Mma turned and stared at the man, and knew that Phyllis was right. But somehow it didn't feel right to go out there and overwhelm the man with her beauty so he could part with his money. No way. She didn't want to cheapen herself. Not with this man. She turned to Phyllis and smiled. "Do your job, darling, and I will do mine." Phyllis sighed and squared his shoulders, ready to meet the mysterious man. As Phyllis went to meet him, she stood there eating up every delicious part of the man with the eyes of a designer. She couldn't quite tell why she refused to go and meet him. She knew she would have been more successful with him, but there was something about the man that was arresting and at the same time frightening. It was like the same feeling you get when you are about to fall. Uche looked around for the hazel-eyed beauty, somehow reluctant to ask of her from all the sales representatives hovering around. He knew the girl owned the place, but somehow for the first time in his life, he was unsure of how to approach a woman. Then he saw one of the men he had seen escorting her at several events. He felt his anger rise, and with the anger came the realization that the man could actually be the girl's husband. Yet, that was a reality he wasn't ready to face. Husband or not, he was going to put an end to this madness the only way he knew. He couldn't just allow the girl invade his thoughts the way she had been doing without so much as "by your leave" and do nothing about it. To his surprise, the man was walking towards him. He had mistaken him to be a customer. What surprise lay in store for him when he would find out he was actually there to steal his woman? He squared his shoulders, ready to intimidate him. Mma couldn't stop looking at the man. Suddenly, he dipped his hands in his trousers pocket and brought out his cell phone. He spoke in it for a moment, turned abruptly and left just as Phyllis was walking towards him. She almost laughed as Phyllis stopped suddenly, frowning at the man's retreating form. She could imagine 1,000 different curses Phyllis was silently heaping on him. She walked into her office and sat down, looking at her itinerary for the day. She had never been comfortable behind a desk. She was more comfortable in her studio, surrounded with fabrics and sewing machines. But she also had to do the paperwork and talk to her investors. Mma was fast becoming a household name, and she was still wondering how. She put her mind to rest and concentrated on the job at hand. And just like that, her thoughts took another turn. He returned to the mystery man. What was his mission in her boutique? It was obvious he wasn't there to shop, and whatever he came for, he didn't get. That left a niggling thought in her mind that he might come back. Her heart lurched at that thought. Whatever was wrong with her, she scolded herself. What if he came back? What business of hers was it? He was a total stranger, and that was all he was ever going to be. Uche opened the door to his massive office and closed it firmly behind him. He was calling himself 1,000 different kinds of fool for what had transpired. He had behaved like a teenager having his first crush. Where was his finesse? He sighed. What would the tabloids say if they had seen him? Billionaire playboy tongue-tied over a woman. He shook his head in self-disgust and wondered for the 100th time what was wrong with him. It was not as if she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Yes, she was indeed beautiful, with a perfect body that would have every hot-blooded man aching at very uncomfortable place. But that was not an excuse to follow her to her workplace. He was losing it, he thought. He moved behind his massive executive table and sat down. Mma was going to have to wait for another day when he had better reason to seek her out. He was surprised at the fierce wave of disappointment that washed over him. He closed his eyes briefly, trying to block out the face of one very enchanting woman. He was going to have her, he thought fiercely. He looked up as a slight knock came to his door, and one of his top executives entered. As always, his eyes widened with appreciation of the woman. Star was one of the finest women he had ever known. She was beautiful and possessed such charisma that intimidated others around her, and he had employed her for that singular reason. The other reason being that she was also very intelligent, and he was impressed with the way she was climbing both the corporate and social ladder. There was a time when she first came to work for him, they could have had an affair because he was quite attracted to her and she to him, but common sense had prevailed. They worked well together and they found out that they wanted that more than their carnal feelings for each other, and a deep bond had developed afterwards. Today she was looking exceptional in a short maroon red skirt suit. He smiled because he knew that Star dressed on purpose and she knew exactly what her legs did to a man's libido. He looked at her, remembering that it was an urgent call from her that saved him from making a total fool of himself. What was so urgent that could not wait? Uche asked, assuming the boss's role. I thought I should let you know. Steve has been distressed. There has been some disturbances in the Niger Delta. And that is supposed to be news? Not when it involves our company. Well, okay, what happened? Steve thinks you might want to come to Port Harcourt because the locals are stirring up again. You know I can't. I have Uju's engagement party this night. This one is also important. We have been lucky because the locals think we are different from other oil companies because of all we have given back to the community. But Steve believes that someone is stirring them up and a visit from you could calm them down. Uche thought about it for a while. There was no way he was going to miss Eva's party without his family thinking he was still angry with Charles. At the same time, he could not afford any kind of upheavals with his pipelines. You go, he said to Star, and she gasped. Why not? They know you as well as they know me, and you can get the job done as perfectly as I would, or even better. You can charm them with your alluring smile. I don't think it's you they want. Why do I pay you a six-figure sum if you cannot fix something like this? He glared at her. You are an expert manipulator, Uche. I will go so I can at least justify my pay. He smiled at her. I expect that and more. You leave tonight. Lucky you I don't have a man in my life. The way you work me, he would turn tails. Uche laughed as she left. He knew he could have easily gone had he wanted to. The truth was he didn't want to, and at the back of his mind, it wasn't because of his sister's party. He could very well see the hazel-eyed beauty. He sighed. Oh, one more thing, Uche. Star turned around and he looked up. I take it you knew about the visit this morning. She called me to find out if you were back. How is the man supposed to survive when his sister and employee team up against him? He asked exasperated. Star laughed. And the very evil she warned you against is about to. She didn't finish the sentence because just at that instant, Angela walked in looking very beautiful in an emerald green turtleneck gown that did nothing to hide her perfect figure.